welcome to the ECV channel. And in this episode, I managed to have a conversation with Tom Zed, one of Australia's prominent electric vehicle supporters, and in fact an advocate of new technology in general. We had a great discussion talking about the car industry in general and about what the future might hold for the Australian car industry. Have a watch and see what you think. Tom, thank you very much for joining me today here in the ECV Consulting channel. And you have a fantastic experience in the automotive industry. I think that the pair of us are quite similar in that respect, in that we are both what would have been self-proclaimed petrol heads, but I don't think we can use that term these days with electric vehicles, hydrogen vehicles. I think calling yourself a lead acid head doesn't quite go down that well.
I would agree with that, Lloyd. Thanks for having me. I used to call myself a petrol head for many, many years. I go back about 4 decades. I've learned to drive when I was 12. Always been around cars and trucks. I got my first driver's license at the age of 15, and those were the days. And ever since, I've rallied cars, I've raced, I've driven anything on wheels. One thing I haven't driven yet is a tank, but that's another story. So yeah, petrol head very much so. I now say I'm a new technology fanatic, and it's obviously evolved over the last decade. And since I've graduated quite recently, just 4 years ago, with a Bachelor of Computing Systems degree, the term petrol head definitely does not stick.
No. But what's really interesting is not just your time in the automotive industry, but your backstory from that, because you went travelling at a young age and have been exploring around the world. So you actually come into this with quite a lot of life experience, as well as automotive experience in terms of sales, and as you said, just being a keen motoring enthusiast.
Very much so, and I'm now, this is really the latest, I'm trying not to use the term globalized economy anymore due to this pandemic, because that's definitely going to change, and that's not just my personal opinion, as the borderless globalized economy is bound to shrink and become more local. Yes, indeed, I've driven and ridden all around the world. With pride, I must say, I've recently ridden around Australia. I did 20,300 kilometers unassisted solo under the stars, riding around this huge big continent. And why did I mention this? This is blowing my own trumpet. But no, it's been a great achievement.
Please do, Tom.
Great achievement. It was not riding an electric bike as yet. Oh, that's right, because I was going to mention that even though the implications of electrification and electric vehicles apply all around the world, the market ever slightly vary. So, for example, in California, the charging infrastructure is fantastic, thanks to you know whom. Scandinavians are not too far behind. Norway has just reached 50% of all new car registrations last month being electric vehicles. And yet, for example, in India or in Poland, they are still burning coal to get their electricity, which upsets all those who despise us, saying that electric vehicles are not zero emissions, because they aren't. Nothing really is zero emissions. Zero tailpipe emissions is a more accurate term to use, and so on and so on. So yeah, let's try not to stick to particular camps of thought and combine it all together. Something else that I just remembered I was going to say to you, how different the distances that we cover, and the old range anxiety with electric vehicles. How in Central Europe you drive from one large metropolitan area to another within 30 or 40 miles, and you will get to a fast charging station. And how in Australia, it's 11 or 1200 kilometers between, say, Brisbane and Sydney, and I rode for days on end without reaching anything but a small village that had one petrol bowser. So again, these markets really vary, and in Australia in particular, it will be a hurdle, the lack of infrastructure and the long distances, before our uptake of electric vehicles. In cities right now, the only way of dealing with it is really charging overnight at home. And how many of us live in apartments where that is not possible?
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Do you think then that it's more likely that businesses and commercial enterprise, particularly in inner cities, are going to be the ones that are going to take that transition forward for battery electric vehicles because they have somewhere where they can park the vehicle overnight to charge it?
Absolutely, yes. I drove a Model S a couple of years ago, somehow pretending to be a buyer, but one day it's going to happen. And I was thinking, how am I going to charge this thing? And I'm obviously a city dweller, very much so. I mean, every hotel would now allow you to plug in overnight if you park in their forecourt. I would imagine even every McDonald's restaurant would also allow you to do that. So even for longer trips, it is possible to plan your destinations and charge up accordingly overnight. Campgrounds would allow you to do it if you have a long extension lead to plug in somewhere. So it is possible, and it's coming, mainly in the cities to start off with, and also how we plan our trips. That's going to change as well.
But what's the political infrastructure or the political motivation in Australia to drive either hybrid vehicles or full battery electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles onto the roads? Or is there still a mindset that automotive is it's an old dinosaur type thing, a relic of the Ford Holden days with big V8 engines and gas guzzling? Is that still the political mindset that's out there in Australia at the moment?
Not only political, but also social, and social drives votes. So the two go hand in hand, and absolutely yes, the heavy trucking industry, which is also my background, will be lagging for at least a decade, if not longer, as it's powered with diesel vehicles, which are, by the way, a great application in heavy haul. But yes, the current government, for the sake of votes, are definitely not endorsing anything towards building the infrastructure. And who is to pay for it if not government? But currently, even our city urban tradies, and what I call by tradies, guys that are towing, plumbers and builders, 100% diesel. So that's just a cultural thing, and it's going to slow down the uptake in Australia in particular, maybe in a similar way to America, who are our fellow petrol heads, with the exception, of course, that their infrastructure, in particular in California and other states, is growing, for the credit of battery electric vehicles.
I just want to get a little bit of understanding from yourself about battery technology. I mentioned earlier on, lead acid heads. So, going back to the old days of big lead acid batteries. Obviously, we've moved on from that now. We're on lithium-ion batteries. What's going to happen in the future? Because there is this issue about the mining of cobalt for lithium-ion batteries. That's a big problem. That's also one of the reasons that people who are not supporters of electric vehicles use, it's one of those arguments, well, it's not that clean and green if you look at the mining methods. And in some cases, some of those mining methods might not necessarily be very ethical. What do you say back to those people who have that opinion, and where do you think battery technology is going to go moving forward?
I'm very hopeful that how we mine currently will improve, change, and become socially sustainable. And I know for sure that the battery technology is obviously evolving like everything else out there, that there will be other methods of producing and maintaining or increasing capacity to store energy, that within only a few years we'll have other stuff out there that will suffice for the range that we require out of our electric vehicles. So it'll change and evolve, and I'm hopeful that it's coming within a short period of time.
Tom, it's been great speaking with you, and may the sun shine on you for the rest of the day. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm sure we will speak again in the future. Any final words from you before we go?
Likewise, it's been great talking. I just want to communicate the message to our networks to combine resources and our thoughts rather than stick to a particular camp of thought and technology, because there is no superior or inferior at the moment. And let's have our eyes and minds open, and how it all evolves, and as it does, the combination of all will prevail towards a better sustainable future.
What a great way to end. Tom, thank you very much for your time. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully we get to speak to you again very soon.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Well, just a small snippet of the interview with Tom. If you want to watch the full interview, please sign up to our Patreon page, where you can get all of the full interviews with people that we've been speaking to over the last few months, and you have the opportunity to contribute to future interviews and put your questions forward to our future interviewees. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you all soon. Keep safe.